Hi, everyone. David and Gino here, taking a look at race 10 on Saturday at Saratoga. Well, the top handicap horses are in the Whitney, the next race on the card, but the fastest horse on Saturday at Saratoga might be in race 10, the grade 2 Troy. And that, of course, is the number 6 Cogburn. He set a North American record when winning the grade 1 Jaipur Stakes during the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival, a sub 1 minute, 5.5 furlongs. And he's going the same distance on the turf here over the same Saratoga turf course. So not sure what's supposed to be different, Gino. He is 4-5 on the morning line.
Yeah, he's awesome right now. He's just in such good form. He's faster this year than he was last year, where he was sit off the pace a little bit more. It's like this year they just know he's that good. They don't even want to mess around. They just put him right on the front end or keep him as close to the front as possible. When you're just talking about speed figures, he's run a 107 and a 111 Beyer speed figure in his 2 races this year. And what makes this race from a gambling standpoint a little bit difficult is it does feel like it's him head and shoulders above everyone else. And then maybe 3 or 4 horses who are in that second tier who are probably pretty evenly matched. But yeah, he's classy. And when he's fast and classy and he can dictate his own trip, these are the horses that are just really tough to beat, David.
The cool thing about Cogburn, when you look at his past performances, is he started out as a closing sprinter who would make a big rush from last to first, using that big turn of foot on the turf that he developed to win races. But this year, he's shown the speed to get to the front end and then close off his own fractions, which is why he's been able to achieve these lofty speed figures in his last couple of starts. And speaking of that, I think that's critical to taking a look at this time from US pace projector for the Troy. He is shown on the front end. He made the lead through some very fast fractions last time in the Jaipur and kept going. And I don't see the speed that can run with him if he lays down the same kind of fraction in this race. So just really tough to see a trip being what beats this horse on this occasion.
Exactly. Like he's the classiest, he's the fastest, and it's not even a race where there's a lot of other speed on paper that feels like it's going to make life difficult for him. And that's how I'm kind of handicapping this race, maybe looking for some value underneath him, some horses who could be more forwardly placed in a race where I don't think there's all that much early speed on paper. And that could compromise some of the horses who want to come from way out of it in a turf sprint.
Let's go through this field in post position order, beginning with the number 1 Mischief Magic, who you might have noted had the late pace flag on his chiclet on the Timeform US pace projector. He is a deep closer who does like to finish strongly at the end of his races. And he was running on at the end, widest of all through the stretch of the Jaipur, just could never get close to Cogburn that day. Was also beaten by Cogburn 2 back in that turf sprint on Derby weekend, and just feels like a horse that is a cut below the favorite. If pace develops, he will be firing at the end. But as you were saying, I don't see the pace that is going to force Cogburn to run faster than last time, and that just might not set it up for this horse's style.
In the early parts of his last 3 races, he's been 12th, 14th, 11th, 12th, and 12th early on in all 3 of those races. So just from positioning, he's way at the back of all these fields. And I don't know if there are 3 speed horses in this race that will help make this pace to his liking or give him the type of trip that he needs. Now, a strength is that he is exiting the Jaipur, which has become a very live race so far. We've already seen 3 next out stakes winners. Star of Mystery won a grade 3 next out with a 106 Beyer speed figure. Coppola won an off turf stakes, and then Filio di Ariana won the grade 2 Highlander next out with a 101 Beyer speed figure. So he is exiting a live race. The problem is, so is Cogburn. Cogburn beat all of those horses who have come back and run well. So I can't really get there for him on the win end in this spot.
Yeah, and Mischief Magic, not a horse who's going to be some big price going out for the connections that he does. Godolphin and Charlie Appleby with William Buick aboard. The number 2 is Outlaw Kid. He got the job done in an optional claiming race last time at Aqueduct. I thought got a very good trip that day. The pace really developed on the front end. He was able to make the last move to close down Big Invasion, who we'll get to a little bit later. Outlaw Kid's run some nice races, including some good races at Saratoga in the past. It just feels like he would have to take a significant step forward from a speed figure standpoint to bridge the gap between he and some of the better horses exiting the Jaipur.
Yeah, and the way that I'm kind of handicapping this race, I'm going to look at it like I think Cogburn is kind of head and shoulders above. And then if I'm looking for the way to get value out of this race, I'm trying to find some horses underneath that I can hook up with Cogburn that I think are fair prices. And this is actually one of them because he is one of those horses who has a high ceiling. He's capable of big races. He's not that consistent week in, week out, but he's in very nice form again. He's as he comes into this race off of 3 pretty good efforts. He's proven over this turf course. So I think I could see him third start of the form cycle take one more step forward, closer to where his ceiling is, which was 100 buyer speed figure. And I could see that putting him in the tries and in supers and maybe being a nice value horse to fill out some of the bottom exotics.
The number 3 is Dancing Buck. He is one of the few others, along with Cogburn, that does have some early speed in this race. We saw that too back when he wired the elusive quality. That was a race that really favored horses that had forward position, as Dancing Buck did. Last time, though, he tried to go, but just could not keep up with the pace that Cogburn was setting, got a little shuffled back in the middle portions of that race. Never threw in the towel. He was staying on at the end to be 6th that day. I would be surprised if he's able to turn the tables on Cogburn, but maybe he can fall into the right trip, kind of following that horse along the rail in the pocket and get a piece of this.
That's exactly how I'm mapping it out for him. So I think that the connections are going to want to be aggressive with him. I don't think he's faster than Cogburn, but I think they're going to want to make sure he's sitting 2nd or 3rd, at least up close where he's been successful. That's the trip that's been good for this horse. So, and after him, there's not that many other speed horses in here. Early speed, there's just not that many other horses who are fast early. So if he can let Cogburn go, or if for some reason he catches a flyer and Cogburn's been very content sitting just off the flank of horses like this, I could actually see him outrunning his odds, hitting the board, and not having to deal with a lot of other pace. So I think he'll run better. And I think he's actually another one of those horses who, if you're looking for some value in the underneath, maybe he can hit the board, outrun his odds, and just give you a better account of himself than he did last time, where you pointed it out perfectly. He was down inside. There were a couple other horses that were also fast. He couldn't go fast enough to clear them. And then he got that shuffle back and ended up, instead of like just behind the leaders, he ended up 8th, like 4 lengths off of it. So it was not a great trip for him there. Should be a better trip here. Good enough to win, though? I'm not sure.
The number 4, XY Speed, is maybe the most intriguing new face in this lineup who did not contest the Jaipur. He's coming in from a totally different direction out of a series of optional claimers and handicap races down in South Florida. We'll take a look at his most recent start when he got the job done going the 5 furlong distance at Gulfstream. And if he uses the kind of running style that he was able to show on this day when he was up close to a pretty hot pace and it closed off those fractions to draw off to win by 2 lengths over a nice field, he could be dangerous in here and potentially get into the right kind of flow following Cogburn. But previous to this, he had been more of that one-run closer, and I think you've got to give him credit for using that style to find success at Gulfstream, where typically those 5 furlong races are races where a speed horse can just run the entire field off its feet. He was able to make big moves from the back of the pack, 2 and 3 back, to get the job done. He's been in razor sharp form for these connections going back to the wintertime at Gulfstream, and he's got some speed figures that do put him in the mix. He's just getting a significant class test here.
Yeah, and when you're facing horses that you're better than, sometimes it's a little easier to adapt to different trips. Like they were able to ask him for a little bit more, to work a little harder in that last race to keep up early, because I think they just knew he was better than a lot of the horses in that field. If he's working that hard in this race, will he be able to hold on and hold off other really classy horses? My other concern also would be, is he one of those horses who's like a real 5 furlong turf horse? Because sometimes the difference between 5 at Gulfstream and like 5.5 at Saratoga can be a big difference. And on paper, it doesn't seem like it. So if this race was being run at Gulfstream Park, I would upgrade him a ton. Like if this was 5 furlongs at Gulfstream and he had the home court advantage, that would be the way I think I could maybe make a stronger case for him. But I'm just not sure from a class standpoint and the trip standpoint, as you were mapping out. I just don't know if he is as fast as that last race would suggest.
Yeah, watching a lot of his recent races, he's a lot better than I maybe even gave him credit for when I first looked at this race, because he's gotten some tough trips down there and has run his races time and again. He's in great form coming in here, but I've got that same concern as you, that the 5.5 in New York might be a tough distance for him. The 5, Mischievous Angel, is a horse that is very lightly raced, trying this grade 2 affair, stepping up out of an optional claiming race last time where he couldn't quite get to Boats a Rockin', who is a nice horse who's got some prior stakes form. But still, it feels like that race was a significant couple of cuts below what he's going to be facing here, and he's never run a speed figure that really puts him in the mix. He'd be a big surprise.
Yeah, I mean, his overall body of work, if you just toss the race going long, then you say, yeah, he's been very solid sprinting on the turf, but that those races have been at much lower levels, and he's facing right to his outside the best turf sprinter in North America right now in Cogburn. So it would not be an easy spot for him here.
And let's take a look at Cogburn, that likely odds-on favorite in this Troy Stakes. We'll check out his most recent victory in the Grade 1 Jaipur when he broke that North American record, running the first sub 1 minute, 5.5 furlongs, 59-4 at Saratoga. Didn't even know that a time like that was possible going this distance. But when you're able to go fast early and then close off your own fractions, it's really an unbeatable combination. And Cogburn just has that gate speed to get clear of these fields. And then the turn of foot to spurt away at the top of the stretch. Got a 111 buyer last time, a 107 when breaking from post 13, 2 back at Churchill Downs. That didn't bother him. He's drawn much better in this race. It's just really hard to foresee him getting beat here unless he completely botches the start or something unforeseeable goes badly wrong.
And for those of you who have watched some of these videos since I've been a part of them, you probably see sometimes I try even too hard to beat favorites. Sometimes I get a little too cute when I'm trying to take a shot against the very, very heavy chalk. But in this race, like as you were pointing out, he has the controlling speed. There's not a lot of other speed in here. He's going to go third start of his form cycle. He could be set for another step forward, even off of that monster effort, if that's possible. And he likes Saratoga. It's not even like he's a need the lead horse. He's shown us if someone else goes, he can sit off too. So like, I just don't know how to knock him in this particular spot here against this particular field. He just looks really tough.
Yeah, and I looked up a stat that's interesting for Steve Asmussen and DRF Formulator. Because Steve does so well with these sprinters that he gets into top form at the highest level, whether it's on the turf or the dirt. And in like nearly a 60 runner sample of horses that won their last starts in graded stakes sprints, Steve is winning at like 40% with a huge ROI. And that applies to this horse. And you could think of the horses over the years, the Jackie's Warriors, the Echo Zulus. He just does great with these types, keeping them in top form. And Cogburn just going to be tough to beat in this race. The 7 is Big Invasion, and if you want to find a horse that had a tough trip in the Jaipur, it's probably him. He was a little bit keener than I think you would have expected at the early stages, trying to stay closer to the pace than maybe you would have envisioned him, and then just found some traffic in upper stretch, got caught between horses, and Joel had to tap the brakes on it, and at that point, the race was basically over. He bounced back last time in that optional claimer at Aqueduct. Although he was beaten by Outlaw Kid, I think you could make the case that maybe he ran a little better that day because he was closer to a pace that came apart, had to move sooner. So I think Big Invasion is a little better than his last couple of results would indicate, but he still has been a little bit of a disappointment overall, given the talent that he displayed during his 3-year-old and early part of his 4-year-old season.
Yeah, I think coming off of that Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint runner-up effort last year, they had to have really high expectations for him this year. Then he comes in the Silks run, and you could give him that race as a setup race. And then, in the turf sprint, you just want a little bit more from him that day, but he's drawn to the outside. He doesn't really get the kind of trip. And that's where we're starting to see Cogburn now develop into this really, really nice horse. And he catches Cogburn again, and you point out the trouble. And even the last start, it was good. I think they kind of handled him like a horse they thought was going to win. So they kept him close to that fast pace, and maybe just a little bit too close, and maybe a little too kind of confident or aggressive of handling in that race, moving into that fast pace, as you were pointing out. But when you put them all together this year, that's where I've been a little bit disappointed, right? I think individually you can take each of those races and maybe make an excuse, or you can give him a mulligan. But then when you put them all together, I just would have liked to see more stepping forward this year for him at 5 than we have. So, his price should offer you plenty of value, but I need to see a little bit more from him at the current time, like one more bounce back race at this type of level.
If there's a real danger to Cogburn, perhaps it is the number 8 Grooms All Business, who has been in great form recently for trainer Jorge Duarte coming in from New Jersey for this embrace. And we'll take a look at his most recent start down at Monmouth in the Get Serious Stakes. And he got a great trip to win this day, but you could see always traveled like the winner. And as soon as he peeled off the rail at the top of the stretch, he just inhales the runner up, Super Quest, who did come back to win a fast race at Saratoga last week. So the form of this race is strong. He also was impressive winning that turf sprint at Pimlico 2 back over a soft course. Had to alter course at the 8th pole that day, getting widest of all in mid-stretch, and still was able to mow that field down. He has really been razor sharp coming in here. And actually, he's a horse that the connections had wanted to try the Jaipur with. He was the first also eligible in the Jaipur, didn't make it into that race when there were no scratches. But now they get to try Cogburn this time, and we'll see if he's able to take that step forward from a speed figure standpoint. But he probably is the horse in the sharpest form that's trying Cogburn for the first time.
Yeah, he's very tough to knock right now. I mean, his last, what, 5, 6 races. He's won 4 of his last 5, and the race he didn't win was in the Monmouth Stakes race last year, where he was trapped behind horses. He actually moved to the lead, and he got nailed. So he just didn't have the best of trips, and now he'll go third start of his form cycle. He'll make his third start at 5. He's stepped forward a little bit this year. He beat a horse named Super Quest, who was a next out winner at Saratoga, earned a 96 Beyer speed figure that day. So, yeah, I really have very few knocks on him. He has to raise his game another level to beat Cogburn, and he probably needs a little bit of luck, right? He needs maybe Cogburn to get some to have Dancing Buck go out there and Cogburn ends up battling head up with him, or Cogburn stumbles a little bit. Maybe Cogburn gets caught behind traffic. But if something happens to where we don't get an A performance from Cogburn, I think you hit it. Like, this to me feels like the horse that would be most likely to capitalize, because he's just in fantastic form. And this is the right time to step up and face these types of graded stakes turf sprinters.
The number 9, Sosua Summer, another long shot in this field. He tried to stick with Cogburn last time in the Jaipur and really paid the price for it, fading to 11th at the end after trying to stick with those enterprising early fractions. And he's just got to run a lot better in this race. I'm surprised they're trying another spot like this with him. He really hasn't been in the greatest form the last couple of races. Something would need to change for him to be successful here.
Yeah, it's just tough to make legitimate excuses for him and compared to some of the others, like a little bit of trouble, a couple starts back, but just wanted to see more from him. So yeah, I think a class drop, and then that'll help wake him up a little bit.
The 10 is Witty, and he's another horse that has been pretty consistent over the years in these turf sprints. He consistently runs well, usually finishes in the exacta. He just wasn't quite as good as Grooms All Business when they faced off 2 back on Preakness Day. Kind of got the jump on that foe and looked like he had actually kept Grooms All Business in at the 8th pole, making a winning move, but Grooms All Business just shifted to the outside and was able to run him down when he finally found a clear path. And last time Witty ran on well at Woodbine, closing into a slow pace. He's one that can be very pace dependent because he is that deep closing sort. So he's just going to need pace to develop up front to have a chance of getting a piece here.
Yeah, that's my concern in this race with Witty, is that I think he's a very solid turf sprinter. And he's the half brother to Caravel. He's grade 2 place. He's a multiple stakes winner. So like, he's a good, honest turf sprinter, but I don't know if the race shape is going to set up well for him in here with maybe Cogburn, 1 or 2 other speeds, and he's going to be dropping well out of it early on. So a little cold on Witty, just because I don't know if he gets his trip in here.
And rounding out the field entered for turf is the number 11, Thin White Duke, another long shot in this race. He's coming back on very short rest, having just competed last Sunday at Saratoga against Super Quest in that high-level optional claiming race. Made up a little bit of ground, but still checked in 7th that day. He also competed in the Jaipur, which is actually 3 starts back in his past performances. He's a horse who does run quite frequently, and made up a little ground to be 8th that day. He is just a cut below this class level of sprinter. He did earn a stakes victory at Saratoga last summer, but that was a slightly weaker stakes than this.
Yeah, and he actually was 3rd in this race in 2022 and in 2023. Those were probably 2 of his 3 or 4 career best performances, but we haven't seen anything like that in his last 4 or 5 races, like anything close to that ceiling from him. So with the outside draw, with the lack of early speed, he's not in the greatest form right now. Is the race going to shape up all that well for him? He feels like he should be a pretty big price in here.
Well, Gino, I know neither one of us loves to chalk out in races like this that just seem like they're so obvious on paper, but it's just really hard to envision Cogburn losing this race unless something unforeseen happens. So, as I said earlier, just on form, he is head and shoulders above these horses, and he's supposed to get the right trip. So, throwing up our picks for this race, we've both got the number 6 Cogburn on top. I think we both have some interest in Dancing Buck, who we have in there, and the 8 Grooms All Business, probably the biggest danger to the favorite, but he's going to need something to go wrong with Cogburn for him to have a shot at winning.
Yeah, very similar feelings on this race from the both of us, that you're just going to be really up against it trying to beat Cogburn. And for me as a gambler, it comes down to a lot of the times just the race shape. Like, I think that can be the equalizer. Speed can be the equalizer. Pace can be the equalizer with horses that are really, really good. If Cogburn had 4 or 5 other very fast horses in this race, well, maybe we could take a swing against him. Or if Cogburn was a horse that is more of a deeper closer and there was no speed in this race. But he seems like he can just get the run of the race in here, and he's the class of the field. So I wish I could be a little more creative, because this is a race that's going to be in all of those pick 5s on Saturday, the 2-day pick 5s, the mandatory pick 5s. If there is any way Cogburn gets beat in here, this is how exotics really, really pay. But I wish I could be creative enough to get you the horse that could do it.
Those are good points, but neither of us could quite get there to try to beat this particular favorite, Cogburn, in the Grade 2 Troy on Saturday at Saratoga. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.